Alright, so we will here continue working our way through the first entry of the Matrix trilogy, where we will pick up from where we left off in the last analysis, namely the scene involving Neo waking up from the Matrix. By the way, I know we are moving in a little bit of a snail pace with the film, but it is a film packed with so many philosophical as well as religious themes that it takes time to do service to the film, I think. It is, after all, a film which on the one hand delivers a lot of action, but on the other offers up many intellectual gifts and challenges for us as viewers, which makes it a very good film in my opinion. Also, I will mention here that if you haven't seen the other videos in this series, I would recommend watching them as well, along with the simulation hypothesis video. But you can also watch this entry as a standalone feature, I guess, without missing too much as well, I feel. Anyways, after having a go at swallowing the mirror, so to speak, we see Neo waking up in one of the countless machine pods in some indeterminate point in the future. If we really wanted to give a symbolic interpretation here of this act, then we could say something like the consuming of the mirror serves as an intense form of introspection, as the mirror is an object used to reflect oneself, and by swallowing this mirror, then one is partaking in an extreme form of internalization in the form of self-reflection. Or perhaps in simpler terms, one has here undergone the very process itself of swallowing truth, as offered up by the red pill, serving as a different reprogramming than that of the blue pill offered by Morpheus. In any case, the exact nature to the current date in the film is not given, although if we take the sequels and the standalone Animatrix film, which I highly recommend by the way, into consideration, we learn that it must be past 2050, where civilization is thought to have reached some sort of peak in terms of artificial intelligence, or thinking machines. We might here throw in the overused buzzwords of human civilization reaching what is known as quote-unquote as a singularity, a hypothetical point or stage in the future where technological growth becomes both uncontrollable or irreversible, although I must admit that I am personally very skeptic of such a scenario happening so soon into the future, where the current worst exponent of this hyperbolic trend in my opinion would be that of Ray Kurzweil in current times. If anything, the development of AI has consistently underperformed according to earlier predictions, where we might take Barban Minsky, an early pioneer of AI, as a prime exponent of such a trend. In addition, the problem of machines reaching consciousness seems to be a problem sort of much higher complexity when studying the literature, especially concerning the philosophy of mind subject. Anyways, I won't go on a further tangent here, merely reiterate that we should critically evaluate predictions as well as be aware of the positivity bias that occurs in research, where positive empirical views are favored in terms of gaining publication in research journals for a host of obvious reasons. So, more importantly, getting back to the scene where Neo wakes up then, this scene strikes me as that of a Regenesis scene where, precisely because one does not have memories of one's own birth, the prospect of being reborn is very much tied in with that of a psychological horror of sorts, having had no prior experiences to base this event on. Notice here, for instance, the fine detail of Neo being reborn, or alternatively having his first real birth into the real world, happens under the circumstances from being in an famished and physically meek state of bodily composition. Much like the baby enters the world unprotected, with underdeveloped senses, Neo is dragged into the D-Matrix world seemingly ex nihilo, where he needs to readjust his senses to the new external surroundings, after having sucked on the tit of the technological pleasure machine for the majority of his young adult life. Moreover, the baggage from the Matrix world means that he will have to learn to reassess his own limitations in terms of what is possible to achieve in this new form of reality, where the first steps of this process involves taking baby steps, as it were, such as getting his eyes to readapt to the new world. To quote Morpheus when responding to the questions, "Why do my eyes hurt?" from Neo, he responds, "Because you have never used them before." There is a direct parallel there to Plato's cave allegory, and by the way, you can watch my video on the simulation hypothesis for more details on this allegory. In any case, this relates to the fact that Plato mentions that the escaped prisoners being released from the cave will have aching eyes when witnessing the true intensity of the sun for the first time. We're analogous to Neo, who has had the metaphysical construct of the matrix as perfected by the machines cast upon him, such that he will have to adapt both his physical use of his body as well as approaching his cognitive faculties in an entirely different manner than he ever imagined before. This also addresses the fact that Neo cannot, in the real sense of the word, ever return to the matrix in his newer developed state for having been torn from the illusion. Then this very same illusion is not able to provide meaningful support in terms of presenting itself as an enveloped ontological world immersion. Morpheus for this reason therefore acts in many ways as that of a deconstructor, where the matrix cannot be approached from any other vantage point than that of a magical veil being cast upon unsuspecting eyes. A veil that when it becomes unmasked cannot even provide logical consistency, as we see both agent and matrix detractors seemingly suspending the laws of physics. Much like the escaped prisoner from Plato's cave cannot return to the cave without having to readjust his eyes to the darkness again, Cypher cannot properly return to the matrix cave without being intellectually lobotomized, in the sense of removing all memories of leaving the cave or the matrix in this case. Returning to the extraction scene in the Matrix, we here witness Neo lying in a fatigued state on a hospital bed, with his body full of futuristic acupuncture needles being dug into him. I suppose this references one of the many Hong Kong movie homages of sorts where Chinese medical practice is often featured, as well as one could easily imagine it being used in terms of atrophy and fatigue for the poor stuntmen of Hong Kong cinema, who God knows go through a lot of beating. In addition, I suppose there are some nice implications here that not all machines are that bad, as technology can also have an alleviating effect, as seen through the whatever the future of acupuncture is. This reminds me then of the Dune novels, or the Dune universe in general, where one has rejected AI machines but kept other technologies that are deemed less threatening, much like the inhabitants of Sion must wage their war against the machines. So has been done in the Dune universe through the event of the Butlerian Jihad, where a full-on attack against thinking machines has been waged. Only in the case of the Matrix, the peoples of Zion are fighting a second battle of sorts, as we learn that humanity in a much earlier stage fought unsuccessfully against their own machine creations. In reference to the war being fought against machines, we reference, for example, Morpheus in this film, where he states that it was human beings who scorched the sky, to quote, "We don't know who struck first, us or them, but we know that it was us that scorched the sky. At the time, they were dependent on solar power, and it was believed that they would be unable to survive without an energy resource as abundant as the sun." This references a larger Western theme, seen in a lot of Western science fiction works, where conscious machines are seen very much as a threat against humanity. However, what I find cool about the Matrix film is that it leaves enough uncertainty or wiggle room for us as viewers to wonder if the machines really turned against humanity as an inevitable process, or if it was humans' failure to adapt to the singularity event that caused the downfall in terms of a waged war against AI intelligence. To reference some more benign attitudes in regards to technology, which also extends to machines, we could here reference some Eastern examples, such as the religion of Shintoism in Japan, a religion which predates the import of Buddhism to Japan, where robots may be seen as endowed with their own spirit, which in turn motivates respect and consideration. This relates to a larger religious theme or concept of animism, the belief that every object, whether animate or inanimate, is believed to possess a spirit. This concept extends to many other religions as well, such as pagan religions, shamanism, or even among the pantheist religion we've seen traces of this. A religion that believes that the universe is in a one-to-one relation with a deity. Here, one also finds adherents to the view, although there are also naturalist pantheists who reject animism. I recommend checking out the book Elements of Pantheism, A Spirituality of Nature and the Universe by Paul Harrison for more details on this subject. I certainly enjoyed reading it years ago, so it might be worthwhile to check out if you're interested. Alternatively, if we could turn our eye to Chinese religions such as Confucianism or Taoism, where we here likewise find complementary notions in regards to treating robots with respect and care. In Confucianism, for example, we can view robots as a means to an end, or perhaps better, as a stepping stone towards a greater outcome of humanity, in the sense of developing social order and fitting in with a more general notion of a harmonious nature. This weighs the importance of harmony found in this religion, as well as viewing thinking machines as a stepping stone in human evolution towards aiming to reach a more harmonious existence. Likewise, in Taoism, a often paradoxical religion that centers around the Tao, or the Way, often seen as an enigmatic principle that functions to describe the correct mode of existence, emphasizes a natural flow in which robots could be seen as merely taking part in the natural evolution of the universe. As one does not wish to interrupt this current, then one has to offer up respect in terms of recognizing the sentient aspect of machine life as well. Thus here the Taoist extends a form of notion of rights to the machine life as well. To conclude this section then, we can view this further positive view of AI intelligence as contrasted with the negative vision seen in the film, as also being reflected in more Eastern media representations, such as Astro Boy, Doraemon, or one may mention the often friendly robots one sees in Gundam alongside their piloted mecha companions, being operated by human beings. Who doesn't, for instance, adore the friendly nature of the companion robot of Harold, seen in Gundam? One of course finds exceptions in Western media portrayals as well, such as the film WALL-E, or my personal favorite example, as that of the Star Wars films. I would like at some point to do an analysis of the first two Star Wars films, which are in my opinion by far the best ones in the series, so let me know if that's something you would be interested in as well, after I conclude the Matrix series. Anyways, getting back to the film, we see Neo recovering in his surroundings of the Nebuchadnezzar, the main hovercraft seen in the film, although I find the word of a spaceship more fitting to use in this context, as we might easily remove space from the word spaceship and not lose much meaning in terms of the interior shots seen in the film of the ship. It very much has the feel of an old submarine floating around in its native waters, so to speak, when you consider its lackluster interior design. It's something I noticed while watching the film again for the preparation of this analysis. Thus, I can't help but to make reference to Captain Nemo from the book 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, written by Jules Verne, where Nemo, much like Morpheus, is a renegade who has turned his back against society. For Morpheus, this is doubly clear, having rejected both the simulation of the Matrix, as well as serving as an outsider for many of the inhabitants of Siam. Much like Nemo steers his crew members on board the Nautilus with a clear vision, so does Morpheus as well, as both ships can be seen inhabiting advanced technology, where one may view Nautilus and the Nebuchadnezzar as partaking in covert operations as well. Even the insistence of the unraveling of truth behind masked illusory whales are shared between the representations, as Nemo seeks to unravel scientific truths about the vast murky waters in the ocean to uncover naturalistic masked truths. So does Morpheus delve deeper to uncover the masked truths of the underlying ontology of his world surroundings. Although, by not questioning the world behind the illusion of the Matrix, as seen in the first film, he remains localized, leading to an isolated ontological framework, while inhabiting his sparse vessel, the Nebuchadnezzar, that serves as a home to its rebellious inhabitants fighting against the system. In any case, there is a real sense of exploration, truth-seeking, along with a quest for freedom that are shared between Neo and Morpheus, where both characters use advanced technology in order to partake in resistance of the aim of carving out more elaborate spaces of autonomy. Let's not forget that there is oppression underlying Nemo's motivations as well, as he can be seen as fighting against forces of British colonial rule, while Morpheus, on the other hand, is facing his own oppressors in the form of agents operating freely within the Matrix construct. A second interpretation that strikes me here as well is the all-too-familiar underdog narrative, where it is Morpheus, along with its freed inhabitants, that are very much fighting an uphill battle against their machine overlords, so to speak, where the bulk of resources, as well as the most advanced technology, is in the hands of the machines. Perhaps one can make reference to the rebellion against the Empire in the Star Wars series of films as an easy analogy. Returning to the machines portrayed in The Matrix, their advanced technology is also made a reference when we learn that the only weapon at their disposal against the Sentinels, for example, is found in an EMP or electromagnetic pulse. To quote, "EMP disables any electrical system in the blast radius. It's the only weapon we have against the machines." Thus, the underdog reference here is clear, as the only effective means of fighting these machines is to attack technology altogether in some sense, which makes me think of the Luddites in the 19th century with their primitive means of disrupting automated machinery in factories. The Luddites were also rebellions like Morpheus's gang, where it's clear, however, that Morpheus wants an ultimate edge in the battle against the machines in the form of Neo, since operating with EMPs is more than anything a means of survival or a means to barely get by in the fight against agents in the Matrix. We will talk more on Sentinels when we reach scenes depicting them later in the film. Getting back to the hovercraft, we should make reference to the naming of the hovercraft, which is named after a biblical king, Nebuchadnezzar II, found in the Old Testament, who ruled Babylon, a powerful city-state of Mesopotamia, from 605 to 562 BC. Keep in mind here that city-states were the norm until later consolidation into empires with more unified territory became more present. It is then not surprising that we see Zion in the sequel films as serving as its own city-state. Anyways, let's get back to history here. We could say that there is a sense in which the Bible represents Babylon with that of opulence over corruption, as well as moral decadence, where the symbolic naming of the spaceship in the film now makes a lot more sense. For is not Babylon itself meant as a replacement word for that of the Matrix simulacrum itself, where according to Morpheus, human beings have been enslaved with the end result of conforming to an ignorant system of oppression. The meaning of Nebuchadnezzar now can be seen in relation to the great king of the Neo-Babylonian Empire, who fought against oppressive forces within Babylon, and who is very much associated with partaking in rebuilding, much like Morpheus is trying to rebuild the new world from outside the Matrix illusion for its new and more free inhabitants. We could also make mention here to the Hanging Gardens of Babylon, one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world, as an instance of one of the constructions, although the site has not at present been confirmed by archaeological evidence. It is not referenced, for instance, by the famous ancient Greek historian of Herodotus, although we could also imagine that it was not known to the Greeks, or not known to Herodotus in particular. For more on Herodotus, we will explore him eventually in my Ancient Greece history series, which I hope to get back to soon. Anyways, Another sense in which there is a shared similarity between Nebuchadnezzar II and Morpheus stems from the fact that both people are concerned with visions of the future. For instance, a substantive portion of the reference to Nebuchadnezzar in the Bible, stemming from the book of Daniel, mentions him having dreams which are then interpreted by David, a noble Jew who gets exiled at Babylon. Among others, he dreams of a great tree that is said to shelter the world, and a statue made of 4 metals. In the dream concerning the statue here is seen to be destroyed by a stone that grew into the mountain that covered the earth, and we can furthermore interpret each metal in regards to the statue as representing a different power, whereby the destruction of the statue can then be taken to symbolize the destruction of various empires, where in the end what emerges is the establishment of God's kingdom. There is thus a direct parallel between these visions and the visions that Morpheus himself has, where like the statue, there will be a destruction of the empire of the machines, and a new emergent order will appear, symbolized and actualized by whom Morpheus refers to as the One, in the guise of Neo. The main point of the first film is then clear. It is to extract Neo from the Matrix, and this will eventually lead to a new order, according to Morpheus. However, it must be up to Neo himself to choose this path, as Morpheus is very well aware of the dangers of a blind determinism in terms of prophecy, as is referenced when he first meets Neo, to quote, "Morpheus, do you believe in faith, Neo? No. Why not? Because I don't like the idea that I am not in control of my life. I know exactly what you mean." It seems that Morpheus does not want Neo to blindly do what Morpheus tells him to do, as a human being in control of his life, is the very notion that all the detractors of the Matrix fights for on a daily basis. Replacing machine control with a sort of religious coercion or control is then not warranted according to my reading of Morpheus. Also, as we will see later in the film, Cypher serves as an exception to fighting for his own creative freedom outside the Matrix, but more on him when we get to him in the film later on. To return to the vision, this vision Morpheus has, furthermore, has been interpreted by the Oracle, much like Nebuchadnezzar II has had his dream interpreted by Daniel in the Bible. Lastly, I did look up the root word of Nebu of Nebuchadnezzar, which translates into the Egyptian symbol for gold, where we furthermore may make reference to the Middle Egyptian hieroglyph for Nebu, which is the symbol here, that was according to Wikipedia followed by the goddess determinate, the symbol here, which changed its meaning into the golden one, where I suppose then that here, the Nebuchadnezzar functions in many ways as the host vessel of the golden one in the form of Neo. However, if the directors were aware of this fact, I am skeptical, but it's a fun tidbit to consider, I think, nonetheless. Since we are discussing here the subject of prophecy and dreams, I thought it might be worthwhile to give a little teaser in terms of the possible interpretation of the oracle seen later in the film. For instance, the interpretation that I find most likely is that she has the ability to predict future events, but that these future events hinges on the composition of character or the ethos of the actors involved in the prediction. In the case for Neo then, it will, as we will see in the end scenes of the film, require him to resurrect himself in order for the prediction to come fully true. This is in correspondence with the oracle prediction that she makes of Neo, stating that he has the gifts, but asserts that he will not fulfill the prophecy in his lifetime, thus requiring another rebirth, if you will, which is given in the end scenes of the film. This view of the oracle, I presume, is also a view I presume is shared by Morpheus himself, as he answers in the affirmative to the above given quote about having control of one's life that I quoted earlier, as the Matrix operates as a construct to negate control of one's own bodily functions behind the simulation, which one is forced into without having previous knowledge of a separate external world, then there is obviously going to be an extreme lack of freedom as well as coercion involved in the process. It is therefore important that whether one believes in free will or not, that there is a sense of meaning behind one's action. We might here therefore give an account of determinism in philosophy, which tries to reconcile the sense of freedom behind actions, even if all events are determined by antecedent conditions. But we will return to the oracle in a later video, which a more comprehensive discussion will be had in terms of free will and the function that the oracle serves within the Matrix stone. Now, returning to where we are in the film, after Neo is seen more healed from his extraction, he gradually learns of the Matrix illusion through interactions with Morpheus, who is guiding Neo through different simulated environments, which are referred to as nothing else but different computer programs being loaded up from a machine. We may say that Morpheus, in a sense, functions as that of a replacement for Socrates, as seen in the philosophy of ancient Greece, where he does not answer questions so much that he wants to pose challenging questions to Neo, and by extension, we as audience members watching the film. I guess you could say then that Morpheus functions in many ways as a poster boy for the Socratic method, a method which seeks to scrutinize commonly held beliefs. There is also an interpretation of Neo himself representing Socrates, which I will explore in another video. Furthermore, it is even the more fitting in reference to the Socratic method when you take into consideration that Socrates himself describes his method of understanding as analogous to that of a child developing in the womb. The interpretation is clear. Neo, the reborn child of machine parents, now needs to seek his own ground and understanding through the guidance of Morpheus, who insists of challenging his own held most confident beliefs. We witness therefore a Socratic exchange of sorts, as Morpheus questions the very notion of evaluating what is truth and what is not. In particular, he takes issue with a naive empiricism of sorts, where one overtly takes one's senses for granted. To quote, "What is real? How do you define real? If you are talking about what you can feel, what you can smell, what you can taste and see, then real is simply electrical signals interpreted by your brain." And they quote, "You have to let it all go, Neo. Fear, doubt, and disbelief. Free your mind." We can make reference to empiricism, which is a philosophy which holds that true knowledge or justification comes primarily from sensory experiences. However, this does not mean that there cannot be a reliance on internal processes or a priori considerations as well, just that sensory knowledge very much takes precedence. There is also a strong tie often between empiricism and science, or the philosophy of science, where evidence being brought forth as discovered in experiments are very much weighted in favor of empiricism being the correct stance. Some notable figures in this philosophical development include most famously David Hume, John Locke, and Francis Bacon. Now, as the video is already starting to get a bit long, we will continue our discussion in the next video on the exploration of Morpheus's dialogue with Neo and the exploration of further philosophical topics, where among others we will discuss the counterpart of empiricism, namely rationalism. There is also a video I made on the simulation hypothesis for those interested, which could serve as a further clarifications regarding the question if we really know what is real or not. So I would strongly encourage the viewing of this video before the next one in this series, as this introduces the topic of skepticism, which is very central to the Matrix films taken as a whole. Anyways, I hope you got something out of this video. Please like, share, comment, subscribe, and all that good stuff, and I will see you in the next video. Cheers!